My daughter looked me straight in the eye and asked for $500,000. The moment those words left her mouth, I knew one of us wasn't leaving my house the same person. "Mom, Derek's in serious trouble," Vanessa said, her voice shaking. "These aren't the kind of people who forgive debts. If you don't help us, something terrible is going to happen." Her husband stood in the shadows of my kitchen, silent, watching me with eyes that held a threat I couldn't quite name. "You don't really need that money," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're 67. What are you saving it for? For 40 years, I'd given everything, my dreams, my inheritance, my dignity to a husband who controlled me and a daughter who learned his tricks too well. But that day, something inside me finally broke. Not into pieces, into freedom. Before we continue, please subscribe and hit that notification bell, and let us know where in the world you're watching from in the comments. Now, back to my story. My name is Helen Morrison. I'm 67 years old. It was 6:47 p.m. on that faithful Tuesday. The doorbell rang 3 times in rapid succession, each chime more insistent than the last. I was in the kitchen, hands dusted with flour, preparing chicken pot pie for dinner when the sound cut through the quiet of my small home. I remember because I glanced at the oven timer, wondering who would show up unannounced at dinner time. Through the living room window, I saw my daughter's silver SUV parked carelessly across my driveway, one wheel on the grass I'd spent weeks trying to revive after the summer drought. My stomach tightened instinctively. Vanessa only showed up without calling when she wanted something. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked slowly to the door, my heart already knowing this visit wouldn't be pleasant. When I opened it, Vanessa stood there with her husband Derek slightly behind her, his face unreadable. My daughter looked immaculate as always, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, designer sunglasses perched on her head despite the fading evening light. But her eyes, my God, her eyes were hard. "Mom," she said, brushing past me without a hug, without even a smile. "We need to talk." Derek followed, offering me a curt nod. He'd never been warm, but tonight there was something different in his posture, something predatory. They walked straight into my kitchen as if they owned the place, as if the past 8 years since Lawrence died hadn't changed the fact that this was my home, not theirs. "I was just making dinner," I said quietly, following them. "Would you like to stay?" Vanessa turned to face me, and that's when I saw the manila folder in her hand. She placed it on the kitchen table with a deliberate thud that made the salt and pepper shakers rattle. "We're not here for dinner, Mom. We're here because Derek's in serious trouble, and you're the only one who can help us." My hands found the back of a chair, gripping it for support. "What kind of trouble?" Derek stepped forward, arms crossing over his chest. He was a tall man, intimidating when he wanted to be. The kind that doesn't go away with apologies or promises, Helen. The kind that requires immediate action. I hated when he called me Helen instead of Mom. He'd done it since the wedding 5 years ago, as if refusing to acknowledge any familial bond. I was just Helen to him, an obstacle or a resource depending on the day. "Open it," Vanessa said, pushing the folder toward me. My fingers trembled as I pulled back the cover. Inside were bank statements, loan documents, letters from creditors, all marked with red stamps. Final notice. Immediate payment required. Legal action pending. The numbers blurred together until one figure emerged with devastating clarity. $500,000. $500,000, I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Derek made some investments that didn't pan out," Vanessa said quickly, her tone defensive. "It's not his fault. He was trying to build something for our future, for our family." I looked up at my daughter, this woman I'd raised, searching her face for any sign of the sweet girl who used to hold my hand at the grocery store. "Vanessa, this is an enormous amount of money." "We know that, Mom." Her voice sharpened with impatience. "That's why we came to you." Derek uncrossed his arms and leaned against my counter as if he owned it. "We've exhausted every other option. Banks won't touch us. My family cut me off years ago. You know that. Vanessa's friends don't have this kind of money." He paused, his eyes fixed on me. "But you do." "I don't have $500,000 just sitting around," I said, my voice rising slightly. Yes, you do, Vanessa cut in. You sold the house after Dad died. You moved into this small place. You live simply. You don't travel. You don't spend money on anything. Where did it all go, Mom? We know you have it. The accusation in her tone stung like a slap. I pulled out a chair and sat down heavily, staring at the numbers on the page. My entire life savings was $520,000. Every penny I'd saved from selling the family home, every dollar from Lawrence's life insurance, every cent I'd scraped together over decades. Vanessa, I said carefully, even if I had that kind of money, it's everything I have. It's what I live on. It's my security. And what about my security? Vanessa's voice cracked, tears suddenly filling her eyes. What about your daughter's security? After everything you did for me growing up, after all those years you spent raising me, you'd really let me lose everything now? There it was. The guilt. The manipulation. The same tactic she'd been using since she was 16 and wanted a car I couldn't afford. How did this happen? Derek? I asked, looking directly at him. How does someone get into $500,000 worth of debt? His jaw tightened. That's not your concern, Helen. What matters is fixing it. Actually, it is my concern if you're asking me for that kind of money. Gambling, Vanessa said quietly, and Derek's head snapped toward her. He was trying to make money quickly, to invest in his business idea, but it went wrong. Vanessa, Derek's voice carried a warning. She deserves to know, Vanessa shot back. Then she turned to me, her face desperate. Mom, it started small. He was winning at first. We thought we could multiply the investment capital, but then he had some bad luck, and he had to borrow to cover the losses. And then it spiraled. I finished softly. And now you owe $500,000 to people who won't just write it off. Derek pushed off the counter, his face reddening. These aren't bank managers we're dealing with, Helen. These are serious people, dangerous people. If we don't pay within the next 2 weeks, they've made it very clear what will happen. What will happen? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Use your imagination, he said coldly. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was 35 years old, a grown woman, but in that moment she looked like a frightened child. Vanessa, have they threatened you? Not directly, she said, her voice shaking, but they've made comments. About our house, about me being home alone during the day, about how accidents happen to people who don't pay their debts. My blood ran cold. You need to go to the police. And tell them what? Derek scoffed. That I gambled away money I borrowed from loan sharks. I'll end up in jail, and Vanessa will still be in danger. This is your mess, Derek. You made these choices, and now Mom is going to help us fix it, Vanessa said, her voice hardening again. Because that's what mothers do. They protect their children. I stood up, my legs unsteady. Vanessa, I can't just hand over $500,000. You mean you won't? She said bitterly. I mean I can't. Do you understand what you're asking me? That's everything I have. If I give you this, I'll have nothing left. How will I live? What happens if I get sick? What happens when? You're 67, Mom. You're healthy. You have years ahead of you. You can rebuild. I'm only 35, and if these people come after me... Her voice broke into sobs. Derek moved to stand behind her, his hands on her shoulders in a gesture that looked protective but felt like control. Helen, this isn't just about money. This is about family. Vanessa's your only child, your only daughter. Are you really going to stand there and tell her no? The room felt too small suddenly, the walls closing in. I looked at the pot pie in the oven, the simple dinner I'd been making for myself, and felt the weight of their expectation crushing me. I need time to think, I said finally. There's no time, Derek said sharply. We need an answer now. Tonight, Derek, Vanessa started. No, he cut her off. We've been patient. We've explained the situation. Either Helen helps her own daughter, or she doesn't. It's that simple. Nothing about this is simple, I said, my voice stronger now. You're asking me for my entire life savings, money I saved from 40 years of marriage, money I got from selling the only home I ever owned. The home I grew up in, Vanessa interrupted. The home where you raised me, where we were a family. Don't act like that money is just yours, Mom. Dad worked for it too. I have just as much right to it as you do. I stared at my daughter, speechless. Lawrence had been dead for 8 years. The house had been in my name alone after his death, sold to pay off debts he'd hidden from me for decades. Every cent from that sale was mine, earned through years of living with a man who controlled every dollar, who made every financial decision without consulting me, who left me drowning in secret credit card bills and loans I didn't know existed. But Vanessa didn't know any of that. She'd been 27 when Lawrence died, already married to Derek, living her own life. She'd never asked about the debts, never wondered why I'd sold the big house so quickly, never questioned why I'd moved into this small, modest place. She'd never asked because she'd never cared. I gave up everything for you, I said quietly, the words coming from somewhere deep and painful. Did you know that? Vanessa blinked, confused. What are you talking about? When I got pregnant with you, I was enrolled in nursing school. Did you know that? I wanted to be a nurse. It was my dream, something I'd worked toward since I was a teenager. I sat back down, my hands flat on the table. But your father said we couldn't afford daycare and school. He said I needed to stay home, that being a mother was more important than some career. Mom, I don't see what. I'm not finished, I said, and something in my voice made her stop. I gave up nursing school. I gave up that dream. And when you were 5, my mother died and left me $50,000. Do you know where that money went? Vanessa shook her head slowly. Your father's business. He was starting a consulting firm, and he said it was an investment in our future. He said it would pay off, that we'd be wealthy, that I'd never have to worry. I laughed bitterly. The business failed within 2 years. Every cent was gone. And when I asked about it, your father told me to stop nagging him about the past. I didn't know, Vanessa whispered. No, you didn't, because I never told you. I didn't want you to think less of your father. I didn't want you to carry that weight. I looked directly at her. But now you're standing in my kitchen with your husband who gambled away $500,000, telling me I owe you my life savings because that's what mothers do. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Helen, we understand you've made sacrifices. Do you? I stood up again, my voice rising. Do you understand that I've given you money before? $30,000 3 years ago for Derek's investment opportunity. Remember that? The one that was going to triple our money? Vanessa's face paled. That was different. $15,000 for your boutique that closed after 6 months. $20,000 for your dream wedding that you said you'd pay me back for as soon as Derek's business took off. I was shaking now, years of buried resentment flooding out. I've given you over $65,000 in the past 5 years, Vanessa. Not once have I seen a penny returned. Not once have you even mentioned paying me back. We were going to. Vanessa started. When? When were you going to pay me back? After you paid off the $500,000 in gambling debts? After Derek's next big idea? After you bought the second vacation home you told me about last month? We didn't buy. Vanessa stopped, realizing she'd been caught. I saw the photos on your social media, I said quietly. The beach house in California. The one you said Derek's parents bought as an investment. Derek's face flushed red. That's none of your business. It is when you're asking me for $500,000. Enough! Derek slammed his hand on the table, making me jump. This is ridiculous. Vanessa is your daughter. You have the money. End of discussion. I need time to think, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. You have 48 hours, Derek said coldly. After that, we'll have to explore other options. What other options? I asked. He stared at me for a long moment. Options you don't want us to explore. Vanessa grabbed the folder, her hands shaking. Mom, please, I'm begging you. I've never asked you for anything like this before. You've asked me for everything, I said, and the truth of it hung in the air between us. She turned and walked toward the door, Derek following. At the threshold, she stopped and looked back at me, her eyes filled with tears and something else, something harder. I've given you grandchildren you never see, she said, her voice trembling. I've been the perfect daughter. I've called you every week. I've included you in holidays. And this is how you repay me? By letting me drown? Vanessa. 48 hours, Mom. Don't disappoint us. The door closed behind them with a soft click that felt louder than a slam. I stood in my kitchen, listening to the SUV start and pull away, the sound of gravel crunching under tires fading into the distance. The pot pie timer went off, a cheerful beeping that seemed obscene in the heavy silence. I turned off the oven mechanically, pulling out the dish and setting it on the counter. The crust was golden brown, perfect, and I started to laugh. Then I started to cry. I cried for the girl I'd been at 22, giving up nursing school because my husband said so. I cried for the woman at 30 who'd handed over her inheritance without question. I cried for every time I'd said yes when I wanted to say no, every time I'd smiled when I wanted to scream, every time I'd given until I had nothing left. When the tears finally stopped, I was sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, the pot pie cooling untouched. I pulled out my phone and stared at my banking app, the numbers glowing in the darkness. $520,147.82. Everything I had. Everything I'd saved and scraped and sacrificed for. And they wanted it all. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Please, Mom. Our lives depend on this. I set the phone down and looked around my small kitchen. This house wasn't much, nothing like the grand home I'd raised Vanessa in, but it was mine. The mortgage was paid off. The utilities were cheap. I lived simply, carefully, stretching every dollar because I'd learned the hard way that security was fragile and easily destroyed. If I gave them the money, I'd have $20,000 left, maybe less after taxes and transfers. How long would that last? A year? 2 years if I was lucky? And then what? My sister Claire's words echoed in my mind from our conversation 3 months ago, the last time Vanessa had asked for money. She's not the little girl you raised anymore, Helen. She's become just like Lawrence, taking and taking until there's nothing left. I defended Vanessa then, made excuses. She was struggling. Derek was having a hard time. They'd pay me back. It was temporary, but it was never temporary. It was never enough. Another text. Mom, please answer me. I'm scared. I picked up the phone, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to comfort her, to promise everything would be okay, to be the mother she expected me to be. Instead, I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in 15 years. Barbara Holloway. Barbara had been my closest friend in college, back when I was still going to nursing school, back when I still had dreams of my own. We'd lost touch after I married Lawrence, after he'd slowly isolated me from everyone who might encourage me to be more than what he needed me to be. But I'd seen her name in the local paper 6 months ago, retired after a successful career as a financial advisor. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Hello? Barbara? It's Helen. Helen Morrison. There was a pause, then an intake of breath. Helen? My God, it's been years. Are you okay? You sound... I'm not okay, I said, and my voice broke. I need help. I need someone to help me do something I should have done years ago. What's that? I looked at the manila folder on my table, at my daughter's demands, at the life I'd been living for so long I'd forgotten there could be another way. I need to learn how to say no. Barbara was silent for a moment. Where are you? I'm coming over. I gave her my address, and she promised to be there within the hour. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness, listening to my heart beat, feeling something strange and unfamiliar stirring in my chest. It felt like courage. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Derek. Helen, time is running out. These people don't wait. Think about your daughter. Think about what's at stake. I thought about Lawrence on his deathbed, his hand gripping mine with surprising strength for a dying man. He'd looked at me with tears in his eyes and whispered words I'd tried to forget. I'm sorry, Helen. I'm sorry I took everything from you. Don't let anyone do that again. Not even Vanessa. Promise me. I'd promised. And then I'd spent 8 years breaking that promise over and over again. When Barbara's headlight swept across my front window, I stood up and walked to the door. My legs felt stronger than they had in years, as if some weight I'd been carrying had already begun to lift. I opened the door before she could knock, and Barbara stood there, older but still vibrant, her eyes sharp with concern and intelligence. I have 48 hours, I said without preamble. And a decision to make that's going to change everything. Barbara stepped inside and took my hands in hers. Then let's make sure you make the right one. As we sat at my kitchen table, the pot pie still cooling between us, I told her everything. About Vanessa's demand, about Derek's threats, about the years of giving and giving until I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to keep something for myself. And Barbara, this woman who'd watched me give up my dreams 35 years ago, who'd tried to warn me about Lawrence before the wedding, who'd stood by helplessly as I'd slowly disappeared into the role of wife and mother and nothing else, listened without judgment. When I finished, she leaned back and looked at me with something like pride. "Helen Morrison," she said softly, "you're about to do the bravest thing you've ever done." "What's that?" "You're about to choose yourself." And in that moment, in my small kitchen with my friend's hand in mine and 48 hours on the clock, I realized she was right. The question wasn't whether I would give Vanessa the money. The question was, what was I going to do instead? Barbara stayed until 3 in the morning, and by the time she left, we had a plan. It felt surreal, sitting at my kitchen table with legal documents spread out before me, watching Barbara's pen move across papers that would change everything. She worked methodically, explaining each step in her calm, professional voice that reminded me why she'd been so successful in her career. "First, we transfer your savings to a trust account," she said, sliding a document toward me. "It'll be managed by a trustee, my colleague James, who's been doing this for 30 years. The money stays in your name, but it's protected from any claims or legal challenges Vanessa might attempt." "Can she do that? Challenge it legally?" Barbara's expression hardened. "Derek might try. Men like him always do. But the money is legally yours, Helen. Lawrence's life insurance, the sale of the house, all documented as your sole property. Still, we're not taking chances." The second document was a temporary rental agreement for a cabin in Montana owned by Barbara's daughter Emma. It's remote, quiet, and Vanessa has no way of knowing about it. Emma lives in town, about 20 minutes away. She'll make sure you have everything you need. "Montana," I whispered, trying to imagine myself that far from everything I'd known. "I've never even been to Montana." "That's the point." Barbara squeezed my hand. "Helen, listen to me. What you're doing isn't running away. It's walking toward something better, toward a life where you're not constantly being drained." The third document was the hardest. A letter of intent, stating that I was leaving of my own free will, of sound mind, and that I did not wish to be contacted by certain parties. Barbara had drafted it in legal language, but she told me to rewrite it in my own words. "Make it personal," she said. "Make it honest. This isn't just about protecting yourself legally. It's about finally saying what you've needed to say for years." After Barbara left, I sat alone with a blank piece of paper, my hand trembling as I tried to write. How do you summarize a lifetime of disappointment in a single letter? How do you tell your only child that you're choosing yourself over her for the first time? I wrote and rewrote the letter 7 times. The first version was too angry. The second was too apologetic. The third tried to explain too much. By the 4th attempt, I was crying so hard I could barely see the page. Finally, as dawn broke through my kitchen window, I wrote the version that felt true. "Vanessa, I have spent my entire life giving. To your father, to you, to people who saw me as a bank, not a person. The $500,000 you demanded was every dollar I had left. But I finally realized something. I would rather have nothing and my dignity than give you everything and lose myself. I'm gone. Don't look for me. You taught me that family can be the cruelest prison of all. Your mother." I read it 3 times, and each time I felt a little lighter, a little freer. The next 36 hours passed in a blur of activity. Barbara returned at 8 a.m., and we drove to the bank as soon as it opened. The manager, a kind-faced woman named Patricia who'd helped me when I first moved to town, looked concerned when I requested the transfer. "Mrs. Morrison, this is a substantial sum. Are you certain about this?" "Completely certain," I said, and my voice didn't waver. She processed the paperwork, and I watched the numbers on the screen change. 520,000, $147.82 moving from one account to another. My entire life, reduced to digits on a computer. The transfer will complete within 24 hours, Patricia said. Is there anything else you need? Yes, I said. I'd like to close my checking account as well. Transfer whatever's left to the trust. Barbara looked at me with something like admiration. I was burning every bridge, cutting every line that tied me to this place, to this version of myself. From the bank, we went to the post office. I filed a forwarding address to Barbara's office with instructions that she would handle all my mail. Then we went to my house, and I began to pack. I'd lived in this house for 8 years, but as I moved through the rooms, I realized how little of it was truly mine. The furniture was mostly from the old house, pieces Vanessa hadn't wanted. The dishes were wedding gifts from 40 years ago. The photos on the walls were all of Vanessa, her childhood, her wedding, the grandchildren I rarely saw. Where was I in all of this? I found myself in the small bedroom I'd converted into a sewing room. Here, finally, were things that belonged to me alone. Fabric scraps, embroidery patterns, a half-finished quilt I'd been working on for months, a sketch pad filled with drawings I'd made but never shown anyone, a box of letters from my mother, saved from before she died. These things I packed carefully. I filled one suitcase with clothes, another with documents, birth certificate, social security card, medical records, the deed to this house. I packed my mother's jewelry, not because it was valuable, but because it was the only inheritance Vanessa couldn't take from me. In the back of my closet, I found something I'd almost forgotten, a shoebox containing $8,000 in cash. Money I'd saved over the years from selling embroidered linens at craft fairs, from the occasional freelance bookkeeping I did for neighbors. Small amounts, carefully hidden, my secret act of defiance in a life where Lawrence had controlled every penny. I added the shoebox to my luggage. By noon on the second day, with 12 hours left on Derek's deadline, the house was ready. I'd covered the furniture with sheets, unplugged everything, adjusted the thermostat. The refrigerator was empty, the trash taken out, the plants given to my neighbor Mrs. Chen with a vague explanation about visiting family. Barbara arrived at 2 p.m. to drive me to the airport. As I walked through the house one last time, I felt no nostalgia, no regret. This place had never been a home. It had been a waiting room, a place where I'd existed between one demand and the next. I left the letter on the kitchen table, propped against the salt and pepper shakers. Next to it, I placed my house key and my old cell phone, the one Vanessa could track. The new phone Barbara had given me was in my purse, activated with a number no one knew. "Ready?" Barbara asked from the doorway. I took one last look at the letter, at my words that would change everything. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." Vanessa and Derek arrived at my house at exactly 6 p.m., 1 hour before their deadline. I knew because Barbara called me from the airport, where I was waiting for my flight to Montana. "They just pulled up," she said. "Are you sure about this, Helen? Last chance to change your mind." "I'm sure," I said, and I meant it. "Then I'm going to watch this play out. For your protection, you understand. I want to make sure they don't damage anything." Barbara stayed on the line as I boarded the plane, and through my earbuds, I heard the sound of my old life ending. Derek's voice first, muffled but angry. "Helen, we're here. Open up." The sound of knocking, then pounding. "Vanessa? Mom? Mom, please, we need to talk." More pounding. Then Derek's voice, sharp with frustration. "Check the back door." Silence. Then Vanessa's voice, higher now, frightened. "Derek." The door's unlocked. "Helen." Derek's shout echoed through Barbara's phone. "Where are you?" I could hear them moving through the house, footsteps hollow on the hardwood floors. Vanessa calling for me, her voice increasingly desperate. Then silence. "They found the letter," Barbara whispered. I closed my eyes, imagining the scene. Vanessa reading my words, Derek's face turning red with rage, the realization dawning that I was really, truly gone. Vanessa's voice came through clearly, reading aloud. "I have spent my entire life giving. To your father. To you. To people who saw me as a bank, not a person. Her voice broke on the last words. Then came a sound I'd never heard from my daughter before, a wail of pure anguish, raw and ugly and real. No, 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 no. Vanessa's words dissolved into sobbing. Derek's voice cut through her, crying, "She can't do this. That money is ours. We'll find her. We'll sue her. She's gone." Vanessa sobbed. "She's actually gone. Derek, she left me. My mother left me." "Shut up. Let me think." I heard a crash, something being thrown, maybe a chair. Barbara's sharp intake of breath confirmed it. "Derek, stop it." Vanessa's voice was ragged. "This is your fault. Your gambling, your debts, my fault? I'm not the one with a selfish mother." The slap was loud enough to hear through the phone. Vanessa's cry of pain. Then Derek's voice, cold and controlled. "Get in the car. We're going to find her." "How? She could be anywhere. She's got to have friends. Someone helped her plan this. That Barbara woman, she was always trouble. We'll start there." "Mrs. Holloway?" Barbara's voice was loud and clear now. "I wouldn't advise that, Mr. Reeves." The silence was absolute. "Who the hell are you?" Derek demanded. "Barbara Holloway, Helen's attorney. I've been documenting everything since you entered this property. The threats, the violence, the destruction of property, all recorded. I'd suggest you leave now before I call the police." "You don't scare me, lady." "No? Perhaps the restraining order Helen filed this morning will, or the cease and desist letter being served to you tomorrow, or the fact that I've already contacted your creditors and informed them that Helen Morrison has no legal or financial obligation to you whatsoever." More silence. Then Vanessa's broken voice. "She filed a restraining order. Against me. Against Mr. Reeves, specifically. You're not prohibited from contacting Helen, Miss Morrison. She simply made it clear she doesn't wish to be found. Where is she?" Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. "That's confidential. Now please leave before this situation escalates further." I heard footsteps, a door slamming, then the roar of an engine. Barbara waited until the sound faded before speaking again. "They're gone. Helen, are you still there?" "I'm here," I said, my voice thick with tears. I hadn't realized I was crying. "You did it. You're free." The flight attendant was making announcements about takeoff. I needed to hang up. "Barbara," I said, "thank you for everything. Just be happy, Helen. That's all the thanks I need." I ended the call as the plane began to taxi. Through the window, I watched the city lights fade below me, carrying me away from everything I'd known, everything I'd been. The woman in the seat next to me smiled. "Going somewhere nice?" I thought about Montana, about the cabin I'd never seen, about the life waiting for me that was mine alone. "Yes," I said, "somewhere very nice." Montana was nothing like I'd expected. Emma met me at the airport in Missoula, a cheerful woman in her 40s with her mother's sharp eyes and kind smile. The drive to the cabin took nearly an hour, winding through mountains that seemed to touch the sky, past rivers so clear I could see the stones at the bottom. "Mom said you needed space," Emma said, making no demands for my story. "The cabin's small but comfortable. There's a town about 20 minutes away if you need anything. Cell service is spotty, but the landline works." The cabin sat on 5 acres of forest, so isolated I couldn't see another building in any direction. It was rustic but well-maintained, with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen, and windows that framed the mountains like paintings. "I'll check on you in a few days," Emma said, unloading my luggage. "But otherwise, you've got all the privacy you need." After she left, I stood on the small porch and listened to the silence, not the empty silence of my house, where I'd waited for phone calls and visits that came only when someone needed something. This was a living silence, filled with wind and birds and the distant sound of water. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt something close to peace. The first week passed in a haze of adjustment. I woke when I wanted, ate when I was hungry, spent hours just sitting by the window, watching the light change on the mountains. My new phone stayed mostly silent. Barbara checked in once a day, brief messages confirming I was safe. No calls from Vanessa, no texts, no desperate pleas. She'd finally gotten the message. The second week, I began to explore. I walked the trails around the cabin, discovering a creek that ran through the property. I drove into town, a small place called Cedar Falls, and found a library, a grocery store, a craft shop that sold embroidery supplies. The librarian, a woman about my age named Ruth, smiled when I applied for a library card. New to the area? Very new, I said. Well, welcome to Cedar Falls. It's quiet, but that's how we like it. I borrowed 3 books and spent the afternoon reading on the porch, something I hadn't done in years. Not because I didn't have time, but because at home, reading had felt like a luxury I didn't deserve. There was always something else I should be doing, someone else I should be taking care of. By the 3rd week, I'd established a routine. Morning walks, afternoons at the library or working on embroidery projects, evenings cooking simple meals for myself, experimenting with recipes I'd never tried because Lawrence or Vanessa hadn't liked them. I discovered I loved spicy food. I'd spent 40 years eating bland meals because Lawrence said spices upset his stomach. I discovered I was a morning person. I'd spent years staying up late because Vanessa called at 10 p.m., needing to talk through her problems. I discovered I liked silence. I'd spent a lifetime filling every moment with noise, TV, radio, phone calls because being alone with my thoughts had felt dangerous. Now, alone with my thoughts, I found they weren't dangerous at all. They were mine. 1 month after leaving, I got a job at the library. Part-time, shelving books, and helping with the computer system. The pay was minimal, but I didn't need much. The trust account covered my expenses. This was just for me, for the simple pleasure of having somewhere to go, something to do that wasn't about serving someone else's needs. Ruth became a friend, in the easy way of people who don't ask too many questions. We had coffee after work, talked about books and weather and the small dramas of town life. She never asked why I'd come to Cedar Falls, and I was grateful. But I could feel Vanessa's absence like a phantom limb. Sometimes I'd reach for my phone to call her before remembering. Sometimes I'd see something, a mother with her daughter in the grocery store, a child's laugh that sounded like hers used to, and the grief would hit me like a wave. I'd lost my daughter. By choice, yes, but lost her all the same. Barbara called 6 weeks after I'd left, her voice carefully neutral. Helen, I thought you should know. Vanessa hired a private investigator. My heart seized. Have they found me? Not yet, but they're trying. The investigator contacted me, asking questions. I told him nothing, but he's persistent, and he's good. What should I do? Stay where you are. Don't contact anyone from your old life. Don't post on social media. Don't use your old credit cards. You've been careful so far, keep being careful. After we hung up, I sat on the porch, watching storm clouds gather over the mountains. The rain came suddenly, violent and cleansing, and I stood in it, letting it soak through my clothes, feeling alive in a way I hadn't in decades. Let them look. Let Vanessa spend money she didn't have, searching for a mother who'd finally learned to save herself. I wasn't going back. The investigator found me 3 months after I'd left. I was at the library, restocking the mystery section, when a man approached. He was in his 50s, wearing jeans and a casual jacket, but something about him set off alarm bells. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you Helen Morrison?" My hands froze on the books I was shelving. Every instinct screamed at me to lie, but I'd spent too many years lying to protect other people. "Yes," I said quietly. He pulled out a card. "I'm Marcus Webb, private investigator. Your daughter hired me to find you." Ruth looked up sharply from the circulation desk, her hand moving toward the phone. "It's okay," I told her, though my heart was racing. "I'll handle this." I led Marcus outside, to the bench where I usually ate my lunch. The mountains loomed around us, indifferent to human drama. "How did you find me?" I asked. "I'm good at my job." He sat down, maintaining a respectful distance. "Mrs. Morrison, your daughter is desperate to talk to you. If she wants to talk, she knows how to apologize. She's lost everything. Her house, her car, her marriage. Derek left her when the money ran out. She's living in a studio apartment, working 2 jobs just to make rent. Something in his voice made me look at him more carefully. "You're not here to convince me to go back, are you?" He was quiet for a moment. "Ma'am, I've been doing this work for 20 years. I've found runaway teenagers, missing spouses, people who disappeared for good reasons and bad. And I've learned to recognize when someone's running from something versus running towards something. Which am I? You're doing both. And from what I've pieced together about your daughter and her husband, I don't blame you." He handed me an envelope. "This is from Vanessa. I told her I'd deliver it, nothing more. What you do with it is your choice." He stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Morrison, you look healthier than the woman in the photos your daughter showed me. Happier. Whatever you're doing here, it's working." After he left, I sat holding the envelope for a long time. The handwriting on the front was Vanessa's, shakier than usual but unmistakable. I could throw it away. I could return it unopened. I could burn it and never know what words might finally acknowledge the pain she'd caused. Instead, I put it in my pocket and went back to work. That night, alone in the cabin, I finally opened it. "Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you'll even care, but I need to say it anyway. Derek's gone. The house is gone. Everything's gone. The creditors came after us for months, and when they realized we couldn't pay, they took everything. Derek blamed me, said if you'd just helped us, none of this would have happened. Then he left. Filed for divorce and moved to another state to start fresh. I'm working as a waitress and a night clerk at a motel. I live in a 400 square foot apartment with cockroaches and a broken heater. I can barely make rent. I should be writing to ask for money. That's what the old me would do. But I'm not asking. I'm just telling you that I finally understand. You weren't the one who disappointed me, Mom. I was the one who disappointed you. For years, over and over, and you kept giving anyway, until you literally had nothing left to give. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I finally see what I couldn't see before. You weren't my mother's bank. You were just my mother. And I treated you like an ATM with a heartbeat. I'm sorry. For everything. For being like Dad. For taking and taking. For only calling when I needed something. For making you feel like your only value was what you could give me. I hope wherever you are, you're happy. Really happy. The kind of happy I never let you be. I love you. I'm sorry it took losing you to figure out what that actually means. Vanessa. I read the letter 3 times, and each time, my emotions shifted. Anger first, how dare she apologize only after consequences caught up with her. Then sadness for the daughter I'd raised, now learning the hard lessons I should have taught her years ago. Finally, something complicated and painful that might, someday, grow into forgiveness. But not today. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the box with my mother's letters, my important documents, the pieces of my life I was choosing to keep. Tomorrow, I would write back. Not to offer money, or rescue, or false comfort, but to acknowledge that I'd received her words, that I heard her apology, and that healing, if it came at all, would take time. Tonight, I sat on the porch and watched the stars emerge, more stars than I'd ever seen in my life, spread across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. 3 months ago, I'd lost everything, my daughter, my home, the identity I'd built my entire life around. But looking up at those stars, feeling the mountain air on my skin, hearing the silence that had become my companion, I realized something profound. I hadn't lost myself. For the first time in 70 years, I'd finally found her. I didn't write back immediately. Vanessa's letter sat in the box for 2 weeks while I wrestled with what to say, how to say it, whether to say anything at all. Barbara called during that time, her voice careful. "The investigator told me he delivered the letter. How are you holding up?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to believe she's really changed. Part of me remembers every other time she's apologized. Those are both valid feelings, Helen. You don't have to choose between them. But I did have to choose what to do next. Ignore her and maintain my peace? Or respond and risk opening a door I'd finally managed to close? Ruth found me in the library break room one afternoon, staring at a blank piece of paper. "Letter trouble?" she asked, pouring herself coffee. "My daughter," I said, surprising myself by sharing. She apologized for things she did. I don't know if I should respond. Ruth sat down across from me. Do you want to respond? I think so. But I'm afraid if I do, everything will go back to how it was. Then don't let it. Ruth's voice was gentle but firm. You can forgive someone without letting them back into your life the same way. Boundaries aren't walls, Helen. They're doors you get to control. That night, I finally wrote back, Vanessa, I received your letter. I've read it several times, and I believe you when you say you understand now what you couldn't see before. Loss has a way of opening our eyes, but understanding isn't the same as changing. And an apology, no matter how sincere, doesn't erase years of hurt. I'm willing to see you once, not to give you money, not to rescue you from the consequences you're facing, but to see if the daughter I raised is still there, underneath all the pain and mistakes. If you want to see me, you'll come to Montana, alone. No expectations, no demands, just two people trying to figure out if there's still something worth saving between them. Let me know. Mom. I mailed it the next morning before I could change my mind. 3 weeks later, Vanessa called the number I'd included in my letter. Her voice sounded different, smaller, uncertain. Mom, it's me. My hand tightened on the phone. Hello, Vanessa. I want to come. To Montana. To see you. She paused. I've been saving money. I can afford a bus ticket next month if that's okay. That's fine. I'll text you the address. Mom? Her voice cracked. Thank you for giving me a chance. I closed my eyes. I'm not promising anything, Vanessa. I just want to talk. I know. That's more than I deserve. After we hung up, I sat on the porch, trembling. Barbara's words echoed in my mind. You don't owe her anything. But if you want to do this, do it on your terms. My terms. I'd spent 70 years living on everyone else's terms. It was strange how terrifying it felt to set my own. Vanessa arrived on a cold November afternoon, stepping off the bus in Cedar Falls with a single worn backpack. I almost didn't recognize her. The polished woman who demanded $500,000 was gone. This Vanessa wore thrift store jeans and a coat that had seen better days. Her hair, once professionally styled, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. Her face was gaunt, shadows under her eyes speaking of sleepless nights and hard work. When she saw me waiting in my car, she stopped, her expression uncertain. For a moment, we just looked at each other across the parking lot, a mother and daughter who'd become strangers. I got out of the car slowly. Hello, Vanessa. Hi, Mom. Her voice was barely a whisper. We drove to a small cafe overlooking the mountains, neither of us speaking. The silence wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile either, just heavy with everything unsaid. Inside the cafe, we ordered coffee and sat by the window. Vanessa's hands wrapped around her mug like she was trying to draw warmth from it, though the cafe wasn't cold. Thank you for seeing me, she said finally. I didn't think you would. I wasn't sure I would either, I admitted. She looked around the cafe, at the mountains visible through the window, at my face really looked at me for what felt like the first time in years. You look different, Mom. Younger, somehow. I feel different. I don't know how to do this, she said, tears filling her eyes. I don't know how to talk to you without asking for something. That's all I've done for so long. I don't remember how to just be your daughter. Then don't be my daughter, not the old version. I set down my coffee carefully. Be whoever you're becoming now. That's who I came here to meet. Vanessa wiped her eyes with a napkin. I've been in therapy. Court-mandated at first, because of Derek's debts. But I kept going after because I needed to understand why She stopped, struggling. Why I became someone I don't recognize. What did you learn? That I watched Dad control you my whole childhood and thought that was normal. That I saw him take, and when he died, I just stepped into his role. Her voice broke. I became him, Mom, the person who hurt you most, and I turned into him. The truth of it hung between us, painful and undeniable. Derek was the same, she continued. I married someone just like Dad, and together, we treated you exactly the way Dad did. Like you existed to serve us. Like your money, your time, your life, all of it belonged to us. Why are you telling me this? I asked quietly. Because you deserve to know I understand. Not just sorry I got caught understand, but really understand. She looked directly at me, her eyes red but clear. You gave up nursing school for me. Did you know I never even thanked you for that? Never even acknowledged it? How did you? I found old papers when I was packing up the house, your acceptance letter to the nursing program. A withdrawal form dated 2 months after I was born. Tears streamed down her face. You had dreams, Mom, and Dad made you give them up, and then I spent 35 years making sure you never got them back. I felt my own tears starting. Vanessa, I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking for money. I'm just asking you to know that I see it now. All of it. Every sacrifice you made that I treated like it was nothing. We sat in silence, crying quietly while the cafe bustled around us, oblivious to our private grief. Finally, I reached across the table and took her hand. I need you to understand something. I'm not the same woman who left. I can't go back to being her. I know. I won't give you money. I won't fix your problems. I won't be the mother you can call at midnight expecting me to drop everything. I know, she repeated, squeezing my hand. But, I said, surprising myself, if you want a relationship with me, a real one, not the twisted thing we had before, I'm willing to try. Slowly, with boundaries, with honest conversations and no more manipulation. I want that, Vanessa whispered. More than anything, then we start from here, not from who we were, but from who we're trying to become. We talked for 3 hours in that cafe. Really talked. Maybe for the first time ever. She told me about her apartment, her jobs, the humiliation of falling so far so fast. I told her about Montana, about my work at the library, about discovering parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. When the cafe closed, I drove her to a modest motel in town. I'll pick you up tomorrow morning, I said. We can spend the day together. Mom? She paused at the car door. I saw pictures on social media of Derek. He's engaged again. To someone with money. How do you feel about that? Relieved, she said and laughed bitterly. He saved me from myself by leaving. I might have spent my whole life trying to fix him otherwise, just like you spent yours trying to fix Dad. Breaking patterns isn't easy. No, she agreed. But it's necessary. Vanessa stayed 3 days. We hiked the trails around my cabin, cooked simple meals together, sat by the fire talking about everything and nothing. She met Ruth and Emma, and I watched her interact with them, polite, genuine, nothing like the entitled woman who'd shown up at my house demanding everything. On the last evening, we sat on the cabin porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. I've been thinking about going back to school, Vanessa said suddenly. There's a community college near where I live. They have a program for medical billing and coding. It's not glamorous, but it's stable. That sounds like a good plan. I can't afford it yet, but I'm saving, working extra shifts. It'll take time, but... She looked at me. You taught me something by leaving. You taught me that it's never too late to start over. Pride swelled in my chest. Unexpected and powerful. You're doing the hard work, Vanessa. That takes courage. I learned from the best. The next morning, I drove her to the bus station. At the platform, she hugged me tightly, and I let myself hold her, this woman who was my daughter but also, somehow, becoming a stranger I might actually want to know. Can I call you? She asked. Once a week, maybe? Once a week sounds good. And maybe at Christmas, I could come visit again. I thought about it carefully. Let's see how the next few months go. One step at a time. She nodded, understanding. One step at a time. As the bus pulled away, she waved from the window, and I waved back. Not the desperate goodbye of a mother losing her child, but the cautious farewell of two people learning to rebuild something broken. Barbara called that evening. I have news. Derek was arrested. For what? Fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. Turns out those gambling debts were connected to an illegal operation. The FBI's been investigating for months. He's looking at 8 to 10 years. I should have felt satisfaction, but I mostly felt tired. What about Vanessa? She's clear. They investigated her too, but she genuinely didn't know about Derek's activities. Sometimes being oblivious saves you. After we hung up, I sat on the porch with my journal, a habit I developed in Montana. I wrote about Vanessa's visit, about the tentative hope I felt, about the fear that still lingered. At 70, I'm learning that healing isn't linear. Some days I'm angry at the years I lost. Some days I'm grateful for the life I found. Some days I miss the daughter who used to curl up beside me reading stories. Some days I barely recognize the woman she became. But today, I saw glimpses of someone new, someone humbled and trying and genuinely sorry. Whether that lasts, I don't know. Whether we can build something real from the ruins of what we had, I can't say. What I know is this: I chose myself first. And that choice gave Vanessa something I never could have given her by staying the chance to grow up. 6 months later, Vanessa called on a Sunday morning, our regular time. "Mom, I got accepted to the community college. I start in the fall." "Vanessa, that's wonderful. And I wanted to tell you something else. I've been seeing a financial counselor, learning to budget, to save, to think long term. It's hard, but," she paused, "I'm learning to stand on my own, really stand, without expecting someone else to catch me." "I'm proud of you," I said, and meant it. "None of this would have happened if you hadn't left. You know that, right? If you'd given us the money, I'd still be the same person. Derek would have left anyway, but I'd never have learned anything." "Maybe," I said carefully. "Or maybe you would have learned eventually. Either way, I didn't leave to teach you a lesson, Vanessa. I left to save myself." "I know, and that's exactly why it worked." After we hung up, I walked to the library for my shift. Ruth waved from the circulation desk, and Emma dropped by with fresh bread from the bakery. My small life, my simple routines, my hard-won peace. That evening, I received an email from a woman named Sarah in Ohio. She'd found my story somehow. Barbara suspected Vanessa had shared it in a support group and wanted advice. "My son is asking me for $80,000. I have it, but I'm scared. What should I do?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I began to type, "Dear Sarah, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you this. It's never too late to say no. It's never too late to choose yourself. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone you love is let them face their own consequences." 1 year after vanishing, I stood on my cabin porch, watching the first snow of winter fall. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Happy anniversary of your freedom, Mom. Thank you for teaching me that love doesn't mean losing yourself." I smiled and typed back, "Happy anniversary of your new beginning. Proud of you." Inside, my kettle whistled. I'd make tea, work on the quilt I was finishing, maybe call Barbara to catch up. Simple pleasures, simple joys. The $500,000 Vanessa had demanded sat safely in a trust, providing for my future, my security, my peace of mind. But the real treasure wasn't the money I'd kept. It was the life I'd finally claimed as my own. I'd lost my daughter when I left, but in losing her, I'd found myself. And against all odds, we'd both become better people for it. Not every story ends with perfect reconciliation. Not every wound fully heals. But some stories end with something better than perfection. They end with truth, with growth, with hard-won wisdom that transforms pain into purpose. This was mine, and for the first time in 70 years, that was enough. If you're watching this, and you've been bled dry by the people who are supposed to love you most, whether it's your children, your spouse, your family, I want you to know something. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. Walking away doesn't make you a bad mother, a bad father, or a bad person. Sometimes it makes you the only one brave enough to break a cycle that's been destroying everyone involved. I didn't lose my daughter when I left. I saved us both. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to choose between staying out of loyalty or leaving for your peace? Have you ever said no to someone you love and felt guilty for finally putting yourself first? Share your story in the comments below, because maybe your courage is exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Maybe your story will be the permission someone's been waiting for to finally reclaim their life. And if these stories of survival, strength, and standing up for yourself speak to you, stay here with me. Subscribe so we can keep walking this journey together, learning how to love others without losing ourselves in the process. Remember, it's never too late to start again. It's never too late to say no. And it's never too late to discover who you are when you finally stop living for everyone else's approval. Your life is waiting. Go claim it.